Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome everyone into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology, and everyone, welcome into the program. I hope that you're having a fantastic week and we can make it a little bit better because we have the one, the only Mr. Ralph Bond. He'll be joining us here to talk all about 4 stories, and they range from everything from space, science, renewable energy, green technology, medicine. Ladies and gentlemen, don't worry, it's a real medley that we have for you today, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So he'll be joining us here in just a moment, but when he does, we'll have the show notes up on the sites and computeramerica.com, of course, and those show notes will include all of the links, relevant topics, all that and more right there in one place, so that if you're listening or you can't get to something or you want to go back and find some of the extra information that Ralph does, I feel like sometimes he pulls these articles from very geeky sources, and they just assume you know what electroplating is. Ralph, of course, goes out and defines some things for you, makes them a bit more digestible. So if you want to find out more about that, computeramerica.com, or of course we'll have a link to Ralph's site as well. So with that being said, we'll be Ralph will be joining us, but computeramerica.com, it's where you'll find past shows, future shows, articles, archives, reviews, contests, giveaways, all that and more. Ladies and gentlemen, computeramerica.com. Now, with that being said, let's go ahead and bring Ralph on, and we'll go ahead and have fun with today's show. So as I said before, he is our science and technology trends correspondent, long-term Computer America contributor, and all-around fun guy. Ralph, welcome back onto the program. How you doing?
It's great to be back. And I'll tell you what, if you do not believe in climate change, I want you to magically get into your transport vehicle, come out to Portland, Oregon, where right now on the western side of the Cascade Range, we're having thunder, lightning, and rain in late August. This is like, what?
Yeah, I'm not the most familiar with the weather patterns there, but I always thought like the Northwest was always kind of rainy kind of thing, or is that just like Seattle area?
Well, the rain part, but not in the summer so much. And what I'm referring to is if you look at the Cascade Mountain Range, which is a series of volcanoes, okay, eastern side of it, thunder, lightning, periodic rain in the summer is not atypical at all, but on the western side, the Pacific side of the range, it's like, what?
Do you think it could be the remnant of that totally normal hurricane that hit California?
It could well be. That would be a great meteorological question. But I want to amplify what you were saying at the outset, folks. If you've come to the right place, if you want to end the week on an upbeat note with hope for the future based on advances in science and technology, and as Ben was alluding to, each Friday, we look at things in robotics, medical technology, sustainable energy technology, transportation advances, space research, physics. It's all across the board. And again, I guarantee you're going to walk away feeling better about where we're going as human beings.
Absolutely. And, I think we all could use a little bit of that. But, ladies and gentlemen, and again, there at the top, there's home podcast videos, and then Ralph Bond is the next segment there. If you're watching the video portion, we're also going to be showing the videos that we kind of do as we do the segments. Ladies and gentlemen, it's going to be a lot of fun. But you can see all of our past shows that we do here, and, of course, all that and more. So, right there, one place, fun. So, Ralph, I think with that being said, let's go ahead and just get into the news.
Yeah, you bet. And again, folks, come out to computeramerica.com, get what we call the show notes, because this is where I put the links, the images, and so forth, and some additional information we may not cover on air here, but you can come back and learn more. And this is, I hope, an educational as well as uplifting experience. So here's story number 1. The same metal found in hot rods and Harleys motorcycles could revolutionize solar panels. And the subtitle is Chromium is showing immense promise as a cheap, plentiful alternative to costly metals used in smartphone screens and solar cells. And this comes from Popular Science, a story by Andrew Paul. And this is pretty geeky stuff here, so bear with us. Some of the most expensive and difficult to source materials found in smartphone screens and solar cells may soon be phased out for a cheaper, exponentially more common substitute. And we're talking in specific about chromium. Now, whenever a company's refrigerator, tool, or other item is advertised as stainless steel, we're sure familiar with that, right? They have chromium to thank. Manufacturers have long valued the hard, shiny metal's anti-corrosive properties, and adding it to steel allows it to resist degradation and tarnishing. I think we all know this. If you think about cars from the past, when did they stop making chrome bumpers? That's a good question. Anyway, you can picture in your mind what we're talking about. And then, as Ben in passing alluded to this early on, meanwhile, electroplating a thin layer of chromium on top of another metal produces what is commonly known as chrome plating. And in this regard, think of your Harley Davidson motorcycles, your hot rod car engines, and all kinds of bumpers, all that kind of stuff. A little fun fact, little aside here, a chrome can reflect as much as 70% of the visible spectrum of light. Wow. As well as 90% of infrared radiation. Isn't that something?
It seems low because, whenever you see those chrome plated things, like they're like mirror finish, but
yes. It is kind of interesting. But the main thing that really got my eye, no pun intended, is the 90% of infrared radiation. That's interesting. Anyway, all that said, let's get to the news. A team at Switzerland's University of Basel Department of Chemistry recently published in the journal Nature Chemistry the results of their experiments to carefully substitute chromium into catalysts and luminescent materials as an alternative to the traditional noble metal, that's Noble, like nobility, noble metal components, osmium and ruthenium. Wait a minute. What is a noble metal? That was the first thing I ran off to Wikipedia for. A noble metal is ordinarily regarded as a metallic chemical element that is generally resistant to corrosion and is usually found in nature in its raw form. Gold, platinum, and other platinum group metals, including ruthenium and osmium, are most often classified in this group. And again, in the show notes, I have a link if you want to dive in deeper. In fact, with this in mind, sometimes what I do in the show notes, Ben, of course, you know this, new listeners, what I do is sometimes I have side notes that are optional. I'm not going to read through them right now. If you want to come to the show notes and learn more about ruthenium and how it's used in solar cells, it's pretty interesting. And about osmium, you can come and get some more information from the show notes with additional links. But let's go on with the story. Ben, here's why chromium is so attractive as a substitute for osminium and ruthenium. This is amazing. Chromium is 20,000 times more common within the Earth's crust than either osminium and ruthenium noble metals, both of which are nearly as rare as gold or platinum. And again, remember, folks, these are metals that are used in solar panels, smartphones, a variety of purposes. So if you could find something that's this common and relatively inexpensive as a substitute, this could have profound impact, on making these products more affordable, right?
Yeah.
So the net result of the University of Basel research is the potential for chromium to be a fraction of the cost alternative material solution for applications, again, as I said, such as smartphone screens and solar panels. It's just amazing. And then, although previous research into noble metal alternatives, so this isn't the first time somebody has said, hey, can we swap out these expensive things for something less expensive? So previous research into noble metal alternatives for smartphones and solar panels investigated the potential of using iron and copper, and they had some success. But according to the University of Basel team, chromium initially appears to perform much better than either option. And Ben, I want to take a side step here for a moment. Friends, a lot of time what we do with these stories each Friday, we're talking about twinkle of the eye, early research. Okay. We're not saying this is deployable right now. They're not saying this is a final conclusion. They're saying that chromium initially appears to perform much better than either copper or iron as a substitute for these expensive noble metals that are used in smartphones and solar panels. Okay, that's the point here we're making.
So you're saying sometime next week?
Yeah, right. Sometime next decade, maybe.
Gotcha.
And that's where remember, I'm the science and trends correspondent with the emphasis on trends, folks. Okay. Now, some stories are deliverable right now. We'll get into that, but a lot of what we do is really futuristic stuff. So with that said, the lead researcher for the project concedes, and this is a reality check, he concedes that it seems unclear which metal will ultimately win the race when it comes to future applications in luminescent materials. And I love this, artificial photosynthesis. So interesting development here. Stay tuned. Hopefully, we're going to be able to dramatically reduce the cost of solar panels, smartphones, and other devices that use these otherwise expensive so-called noble metal alternatives.
Yeah, it really is the same problem that we have with, rare earth elements and things like that, you need giant operations. That's why, China controls 90% of the rare earth metals that are put into the market today. It's just very expensive to get into that, to get into the earth and get these things out. So not saying that these are rare earth metals, like you said, Ralph, they're noble metals, but any way to kind of make things cheaper and use something more common is going to benefit everyone. So perfect story.
Absolutely.
So story number one, and also Chrome has a great side effect of making everything just look awesome. So extra side effect.
Cool.
I'm not saying they're going to be chrome plated, but anyways, story number one. Story number two, we're going to really, it's of the same page. It's also, and obviously, I kind of read the headline, but more energy story for story number two. And what is this? Creating solar leaves. This is the pictures alone are worth a gander. The idea of this is so great.
I know. This is really fun stuff. So the headline here is borrowing a page from plants. Engineers create solar leaves that produce electricity and clean water. Wait a minute. That's a win-win. Make electricity and clean water. Excuse me. And I got this from Anthropocene magazine, a story by Prachi Patel. And I said, Anthropocene, what does this mean? Well, I just found out relating to or denoting the current geological age viewed as a period during which human activity has been dominant influence on climate and the environment. Wow. Cool word, Anthropocene. If you want to be cool, lay that out on your friends at your next cocktail party. So here we go. Let's get into the story. A new bio-inspired solar leaf design with increased harvesting efficiency is another topic, and that was the headline of the posting on the Imperial College website, which is the source for this technology. So there's a link in the show notes for that as well. As Ben said, the images alone are a blast to look at. The image on the left shows a prototype that looks like a cluster of leaves. So they're little like miniature solar panels. And then on the right, they show the inspiration from nature. And so there's a lot to unpack there. If you're listening to this as an audio podcast, again, please come out to computeramerica.com, get the show notes, get the links, see the pictures. You'll be able to see why we're so excited about these images. All right. So solar panels usually only convert about 10 to 25% of sunlight into electricity. I think we're all pretty familiar with that. The rest of the energy gets converted to waste heat, which brings down the performance of a solar panel. And they are typically cooled passively using air. So like the panels that are on your roof, they just hope that the air helps passively reduce the heat, or actively with water cooling requiring complicated piping and pumps, as you can imagine. So in really intense installations, they might have water cooling. Well, taking inspiration from the natural design of leaves, chemical engineers at the Imperial College London have made solar panels that cool themselves down with water without using any energy, which in turn boosts the performance of the little solar panels. So again, There's no pumps, none of that, but they're still using water to help cool down the solar panels. What? How did they do that? We're going to find out here. The solar leaves, reported in the journal Nature Communications, keep cool by about 26 degrees Celsius. That's about 79.8 degrees Fahrenheit when exposed to direct sunlight on a clear day. And this leads to a 13.6% increase in the efficiency with which they convert solar energy to electricity. And that's significant, 13.6% increase. Now, what's more, the devices also capture clean water vapor to produce liters of fresh water every day. It just gets better and better.
Very cool.
Now, there are some reality checks here on how this is done, but it's still a very, very cool, no pun intended, solution here. So here's how they developed the solar leaves inspired by nature. The Imperial College London chemical engineering team made a passive, energy-free cooling system by borrowing a page from plants. And plants derive a host of vital benefits from water, of course, by sending water from the soil up to their leaves through various tubular structures, thinking like a vein system. So a side note, one key use of water in plants is to have water evaporated on leaves in a process called transpiration, which keeps plants from overheating. And so these scientists thought, well, wait a minute. If plants can cool themselves with water they bring up, water does other things for the plant too, of course. Maybe we could do that for solar panels. That was the ding, ding, ding that started this whole thing. So natural capillary forces and osmotic, osmotic pressure, the drawing up, drive the flow of water in a plant. And veins in the leaves then distribute water through the structure so it can evaporate on the leaf surface. And this whole process of water movement through a plant and its evaporation from leaves is called, as we said before, transpiration. So the Imperial College London researchers made a similar transpiration system for their little solar cells. They pasted bundles of bamboo fibers on a steel wire mesh and coated it with a water-absorbing hydrogel. They attached this 1 millimeter thick layer to the back of a 10 centimeter by 10 centimeter solar cell and put the ends of the bamboo fibers into a water tank. So you do have to have a water source, okay? That's one thing that makes this, you think to yourself, could this be deployed on large scale? Maybe yes, maybe no, but at least this experiment proves an interesting point or a possibility. So the bamboo fiber bundles act as veins, siphoning water up from the tank to the hydrogel layer on the little solar panel, which soaks it up and spreads it all over the underside of the solar cells. There, the water evaporates, drawing heat away from the solar cell. And the researchers collect the water vapors using a collection chamber they place under the transpiration layer. This just blows my mind, Ben.
So it's still very, very, like, even though you have to use water to cool thing, it's still very efficient with that water. So it's not really using that much. It's, no, it's good. It's good.
Yeah. And the main point is you could have these big tanks of water and associated with these solar panels, perhaps in the future, where that makes sense and where the water is available, of course, and have a passive transpiration system mimicking plants that doesn't require electricity for pumps and all that kind of stuff, right? And then the double benefit of once this water on the surface of the solar panel leaf evaporates, it's captured. And so you're producing clean, drinkable water. It's sort of like a cycle, if you will. So under the full sun, the solar leaf device had a 14.5% efficiency, while a regular solar cell had an efficiency of about 13.2%. And a small test solar leaf device produced over a liter of water every hour. Wow. Now, this is where it gets kind of interesting. This is where reality hits the road. Okay. So per the team's projection, 8.5 terawatts of installed solar panels using their solar leaf structure design could produce over 40 billion cubic meters of fresh water each year to, as the researchers noted, significantly relieving the stress of global water scarcity. Well, wait a minute. I said, okay, 8.5 terawatts, that isn't that is an enormous amount of solar panels. Remember, a terawatt equals 1 billion megawatts. And below in the show notes, folks, if you're listening to the podcast, come on out to get the show notes. Below is a photo of an 8.5 megawatt solar farm in Africa. And you can see from the picture, it's enormous. It covers this huge hillside.
Yeah.
And that's just 8.5, megawatts. So you can imagine what 8.5 terawatts would be a lot of panels. But, again, if you distributed this over the Earth's entirety, it could be pulled off, and you could produce a tremendous amount of fresh water. Fascinating concept based on nature.
Mm-hmm. No, well, and research like this has other kind of applications where you could use it in conjunction with existing solar farms that you're going to put in anyways. Generate water as a side effect, and then a couple of months ago we talked about the possibility of cold fusion. China set a new record for being able to run that for like 180 seconds or something like that. America's working on it as well. I mean, Ralph,
sure.
One day, fingers crossed, and this is a trend that that you really highlighted a couple months ago. Energy will not be an issue. We have a lot of ways, either renewables or cold fusion or something along those lines, that energy will someday, I'm not saying tomorrow, I'm not saying next decade, but someday electricity will not be an issue. And when it's not an issue, hey, then you can start to generate water, you can start to generate other materials from it. That's where the research like this really comes in handy, because if you have the electricity, it turns out you can get the water, and that's very, very cool.
Yeah.
So
Again, it kind of addresses a key problem the world is facing: energy and water.
Yes.
Drinkable water for many, many parts of the world is a huge, huge problem. So it's an interesting idea. I don't know how well this idea will scale up, but it's as we've said, Ben, you and I have said this to each other so many times before. It's not one thing that's going to solve climate change, solve energy, solve water shortage. It's multiple things. And this could be a contributing little cog in the wheel of solution.
Yes. It's something that doesn't involve loading water into trucks and shipping it, across the world. Very, very cool technology. So that's story number 2. And just the idea of, borrowing from nature and making technology more efficient is always fun. Story number 2, story number 3. And this one isn't exactly borrowing from nature, but it may be borrowing from you one day. This one's definitely out there, and again, it's to put a trend to it. This idea that the things that we do every single day, the walls in our the walls in our buildings may become batteries, for instance. I think that was a story we did before, or roofs being solar panels.
Yep.
Just everything having a double purpose, and this story really highlights that, and it's very different as well.
Yes, it is. And in fact, before I even get to the title of the story here, this has a connection to Washington, D.C. Also, we're going to find out in just a few seconds. A positive thing about Washington, D.C. How about that for a change? Okay, so here we go. Headline. The headline here is, "These high-tech floor tiles generate energy from our footsteps, and they could change how we power our cities." And I got this from this wonderful, wonderful website I discovered a couple of months ago called The Cool Down. And it's a story by Becca, Inglis. And we've got the links and the images. And of course, again, the show notes give the images which bring this to life. And little note here, this story appeared earlier this year, but I think the idea is so fascinating, I wanted to highlight it.
Oh, for sure.
Especially given a recent installation. Yeah, especially given a recent installation of these innovative tiles in Washington, D.C., of all places. This is really cool. And there's a great video. There's a link in the show notes. The video is wonderful. Then the video rolls over automatically to a more in-depth explanation of the technology if you want to geek out on it. I just think it's great. So, okay, a lot of buildup. Let's get into the story. Here's the scoop. A UK, United Kingdom tech company called PaveGen, P-A-V-E for pavers, Gen for generation, PaveGen, has invented a way to generate renewable energy from people's footsteps. Each time a person steps on a PaveGen tile, each time releases 3 to 5 joules of electric charge, which is enough to power a light bulb for a few seconds. And but remember, that's each step. Think about Think about those images you see of Tokyo, downtown Tokyo, and then the intersections where there's just thousands and thousands of people. If you had these tiles all over that intersection, pretty much that would accumulate a lot of energy. So how's it done?
Yeah, and just real quick, I do want to throw in there that that's something I've never really considered, is because people walk all the time, and that is so much energy just being transferred into concrete, the ground, whatever, it doesn't even matter.
Yeah,
to be able to harness that's such a great idea, because it's something that we're going to do anyways, and then harness it. That's really, really cool.
That's why I just love this. I just love this story so much. And it was the recent installation in Washington, D.C. that brought the story up to the surface and then caused me to go and check it out. So how do they do this? These tiles use electromagnetic induction, which is all about how certain materials release an electric charge when they are compressed. The PaveGen tiles use copper coils and magnets, then help to create a charge through induction. What's not to love? We're not talking about exotica here. Copper coils and magnets, gee, that's been around for a while. Okay. And induction also has been around for a very long time. So a side note here on electromagnetic induction, and I will read this because I think this is so fun. Electromagnetic or magnetic induction is the production of an electromotive force across an electrical conductor in a changing magnetic field. Here's a name you might know. Michael Faraday is generally credited with the discovery of induction in 1831. And James Clerk Maxwell mathematically described it as Faraday's law of induction. So this is technology that's well established, and copper coils and magnets, gee, that's not exotic. I love it. The company says that PaveGen tiles could be a more practical solution for generating energy than wind or solar power, because there is a massive amount of space available in cities and everywhere to lay the tiles and millions of people to walk on them, needless to say. Now, PaveGen tiles can be placed wherever there is a floor, and I added, or flat space, be it indoors or in a city street outside. So the other beauty of this technology is it's not just limited to indoor. It can be indoor or outdoor, as the image in the Washington, D.C. Installation shows. The floor tiles are also not weather or daylight dependent. Think about that. And they can be used to tap a consistent source of foot traffic in busy urban areas like airports, bus stops, schools, clothing stores. Think about this being in the, Hartfield International Airport in Atlanta, Georgia, right?
Right.
Or you pick your airport where there's just 24/7 constant stream of traffic, foot traffic, right? And PaveGen tiles could even be used to help power cities' LED lighting. Now, remember, this research comes out of, this company is a UK-based one, so their example is from their country. It says the company estimates that on Oxford Street in London, which sees anywhere between 138,000 to 500,000 visitors a day, wow, pedestrians could generate around 3,200 watt hours. Now, they estimate that would be enough to help power applications such as LED street furniture lights through the night and public mobile phone charging stations through the day. So cities could start deploying this, and it could just really help with their energy profile. Now, in addition to helping to power cities, the company has developed a way. Oh, this is fun. This you're going to find here the clever marketing linkage here. Okay, let me try this again. In addition to helping to power cities, the company has developed a way to link its groundbreaking electricity generating tile tech with data collection, which retail outfits could use to help incentivize and reward the walkers who have generated electricity. In a store, for example, customers might earn a digital currency or little benefit for every step, which they can use to make purchases or donate to a charity. Gotta like that. Sensors can also collect valuable figures about foot traffic and peak walking times. And one thing I thought of after the fact, Ben, how many of us have had the experience of walking, your feet get tired unless you have really good arch supports and all that kind of stuff. These tiles, if you look at the video, they do compress.
Yeah, they flex a bit.
You could walk on these things. They flex. So the flexing might help relieve maybe stress. I'm not a physical therapist, so I don't know for sure, but my gut tells me instead of pounding against hard concrete or linoleum flooring or whatever, you're giving a little flex. That could be helpful for people who might have arch or ankle or knee pain issues. Maybe, I don't know. So there could be a benefit health wise too.
And there's so many possibilities to this. Looks like the company's been around for about 6 years, so they're still around and still looking to affect some kind of change. So that's always good. But like, I'm curious, Rob, like, I could imagine this underneath, let's say, a football stadium, and not just like the stands, but also like the field itself.
Oh, sure.
Where people are constantly playing and running and practicing. If they could make this some kind of subsurface that's easy to install and easy to put under, sporting events, or maybe even, like, I know they're saying sidewalks, but what about maybe roads? Cars also compress, the thing that they're driving on. There's a lot of possibility for this.
I agree. Yeah, it's endless. And it's again, not dependent on weather, not dependent on whether it's daylight or not, 24/7. Passive, common materials, and a very well-established technology that's been with us since 1831.
Yep. So there's again, just every little thing is going to count, and even sidewalks can do their part. They don't just have to be just useless things that we all use all the time. No, they don't just have to be passive. They can actually be active contributors. So with that being said, story number 3, ladies and gentlemen, if you're following along in the show notes, story number 4, and this is a technology that I've been hearing about for decades, and I've only been on the planet for decades. The hope that our teeth in our mouth that we rely on and depend on, but wow, Ralph, I gotta say, our current lifestyle of high sugar, high processed food, high acidity, we don't treat them very nicely. We don't treat our teeth very nicely. Story number 4 may have some hope for that.
Yeah. And your comment about high fructose sugar, corn syrup, all this sort of stuff, and what we're doing to our bodies and our teeth and everything else. Little side note here on Netflix, folks, if you have a Netflix subscription, there's a series called History. It's called History 101. And they have individual segments on all kinds of topics. And one of them, believe it or not, is about, I don't know, it's like a 40-minute documentary dedicated to the development of high fructose corn syrup. And guess what? It was invented in Japan. Wow.
Didn't know that.
It's had profound impact. Yeah, isn't that something? Great series. Check it out. All kinds of topics, social topics, science topics, and so on. But the one about high fructose corn syrup is, it sounds boring, but it's not. It's really
I'm sure it's very, very enlightening, and something that, if it's not something you've really paid attention to before, it's everywhere. High fructose corn syrup, and it's in less places than it was 10 years ago, but it's everywhere. It's so hard to avoid. So knowing what's happening is also important, but knowing what's happening to our teeth, very important as well.
Yes. So with all that said, here we go. Headline: Scientists just made intriguing progress toward regenerating human teeth. Got this from Futurism magazine, a story from Victor Tangerman. Really, really cool stuff. So here we go. An international multidisciplinary team of researchers, including team members at the University of Washington, has taken a fascinating step toward a possible future in which we could generate human teeth with the use of stem cells. Wait a minute. What? Could generate human teeth with the use of stem cells? Wow. As detailed in a new paper published in the journal Developmental Cell. Now that's got to be a geeky publication. The researchers created organoids, which are 3-dimensional scaffolds of stem cells that mimic the functions of organs. And the organoids they created then secrete proteins that eventually turn into dental enamel, the hard material that protects teeth from decay or damage. And a little side note on organoids. An organoid is a self-organized 3D tissue that is typically derived from stem cells and which mimics the key functional, structural, and biological complexity of an organ. Wow. And there's a little chart I included that shows the use of organoid applications of a variety of things. And one of the uses talked about as regenerative medicine. That's what we're talking about here. The use of organoids for regenerative medicine, in this case, regenerating teeth. According to one of the professors of restorative dentistry at the University of Washington, quote, "This is a critical first step to our long-term goal to develop stem cell-based treatments to repair damaged teeth and regenerate those that are lost." So again, talk about twinkle of the eye, early research, first step, as the lead person is commenting here in that quote. Now, enamel is formed in the body by ameloblasts. That's ameloblasts, ameloblasts. So enamel is formed in the body by ameloblasts, cells that secrete enamel-building proteins. But once teeth are fully formed, these ameloblasts, they die off, leaving the body with no way to fix or regenerate damaged enamel. And I'm going to do a side note here for a second. Being at my advanced age, I think about this a lot. Nature never designed us to live as long as we are. Most of us are, that's why I'm having, my mother used to say, I feel like a car going down the freeway dropping parts. Oh, there goes my liver. There go my teeth. There goes my hair. I think that's part of what's going on with our teeth, right?
I've often felt like if I were subject to nature, I would have been one of the ones that been picked off by a larger bird when I was like a toddler. Just that would have been me. But no, I get you. I understand.
Yeah, I've had many doctors look at me and look at my records and say, I don't know why you're still here. Get it? Anyway, So to fix or regenerate damaged enamel, wow. The researchers recovered specific genetic instructions for assembling these enamel-building proteins through a technique called, get ready for this, single-cell combinatorial, like combination, single-cell combinatorial indexing RNA sequencing. Okay.
Rolls off the tongue.
In the show notes, I have an optional geek. Yes, it does. There's an optional geek out and a link if you want to get into what this is, but it's like way above my brain grade. So here's the deal. They use this technique and they then used a computer program to retrace how genes can turn stem cells into enamel-building ameloblasts. And I'll bet that was an AI-based, machine learning-based program. That's my guess. After a substantial amount of trial and error, the researchers were able to turn human stem cells into enamel-building ameloblasts by activating genetic pathways using that blueprint, meaning the blueprint they developed with the computer program and so on and so forth. And the researchers found that they could coax different cell types to organize themselves into organoids, which came to resemble the early stages of tooth formation. Wow. If successful, the discovery could change the way we repair teeth. For instance, dentists could fill cavities using lab-grown enamel. I just had some old fillings replaced recently, and that would have been really great. And the lead author of the research paper, a professor of biochemistry at the University of Washington, believes we could eventually even take this a step further by filling cavities with living fillings that could grow over time and self-repair. I love it.
Yep. Yeah. No, getting your teeth to, continue their own functions and rebuild themselves and that kind of thing. Ralph, this is, again, to point to a trend, this is the ever-present battle of, kind of reversing aging, which sounds like a pipe dream, sounds like something that is, kind of fanciful, but they're making real progress to, make all cells live longer, live better, to, regrow teeth, things that they thought were not regrowable. I mean, one day, we're probably going to be able to reverse aging, Fingers crossed.
Someday. Could be. And then it'll be a horrible thing. Who gets this treatment and who doesn't? And it becomes a new hierarchy of, the haves and the haves not. Oh, well. That's sci-fi stuff.
Well, luckily we have lots of Hunger Game-esque literature to kind of pull from to see who should get this kind of treatment. So we'll see. But no, aside from that, that is 4 stories if you're keeping count at home. And also, if you are checking out the show notes, you may notice at the very end, Ralph has picked some honorable mentions, some stories that are still very, very fun. But, we only have time. We try to keep this show to about 4 stories. But, Ralph, why did these stories, and actually story number 1 looks very familiar, or I should say honorable mention number 1 looks familiar. But, yeah, tell us about the honorable mentions this week.
Sure. Real quick, I'll just give you the headlines. Please come out to the show notes, computeramerica.com. And you can dive into these if you wish as well. So Ben and I, I don't know, maybe it was earlier this calendar year or maybe late last calendar year, we did a story about this movement in the big shipping container ship market to add sails, to bring sails. But these sails are super high tech. The headline is World's First Wind-Powered Freighter Sets Off on Maiden Voyage This Week. This is really fresh stuff. And we talked about the development and the research and so forth many months ago. This now is the beginning of actually deploying this technology. So in this case, this is a reality. And the image is just so compelling. These are computer-guided, computer-managed sails. They look like tall tower-like things. So it's not like a sail you would think of from, a pirate ship or something. No, it's not that kind of thing. So check that out. That's a story from BBC News. And the other one I thought was really fun, this headline, From Sci-Fi to Reality. Flying cars powered by NASA tech in the works, coming from Jerusalem Post, which is a really interesting source as well. But that's a fun story, fun image. Check it out. The show notes are there with the links if you want to dive into this stuff.
Yeah, no, both of the stories are really, really fun, and the pictures kind of say it all. And it's very nice, like you said, to see story number 1 the first honorable mention, because that's a story that they proposed and they said, hey, we could do this, and now come about a year's time, and they are doing this, and it's
yes,
really fun to see these things kind of transition from, a possibility to actually happening. And I'm fully of a belief that, it's just the British saying, remember the good old days when British ships had big old sails and they sailed the world? They're trying to recapture their glory days. That I'm clearly convinced. So, yes. Ladies and gentlemen, the music means that we are done for the day. I want to thank Ralph so much for coming and sharing these stories with us. They're all great. And ladies and gentlemen, if you want to find out more about them, check out the show notes at computeramerica.com, and of course we'll have links to everything, including Ralph's site. So with that being said, I hope you have a great Friday, you have a great weekend, do something fun. We'll catch you here next time. Until then, everyone, have a great day. Thank you so much. Bye-bye, everyone.